All right, so this week, I was really focusing on, it's interesting, I had a few experiences this week that I'm going to tie in a little bit. One of them was last night that was really interesting because I'm going to share it at the end. But I'm wondering a lot this week about what it is that holds us back from doing and being what God wants us to be when it comes to fear. Now, I'm not just talking about, like last week we talked about fear of inadequacy, we talked about different kinds of fear. But this week, I was really focusing on sort of the bigger question, which is what holds us back. And I think for a lot of us, maybe that first answer you had would be something very specific to you. It would be impossible to sit here and look at this room, even with just 40 people or so, to be able to say, here's what it is. Because many of you would probably say, well, it's this, or it's this, or it's this. Maybe it's something different in your life, maybe it's a different experience, whatever. But we often, I think, we can answer it in a bigger setting. And I want to do that by looking at Matthew chapter 8. And this is where Jesus is talking to the crowds. It's just after the Sermon on the Mount. And he's talking to the crowds, and he's dealing with this massive group of people. Okay, there's sort of this big ebb and flow of this massive crowd that's pushing him around and doing this and driving him here and there. And so Jesus wants to escape, right? He wants to withdraw. He wants to get away from the crowd. It shows the very human side of Jesus to be like, look, I just need a minute. Right? So he's trying to escape. And it says, when he saw the great multitudes about him, he gave a command to depart to the other side. Okay, so he's like, let's get out of here. And then it says a certain scribe or teacher of the law, depending on what your translation says, came and said to him, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Now, I don't know how many of us have ever had someone say that to us. Right? I will follow you wherever you go. But that is a pretty bold statement to make, even if you're not making it with truth. Right? I will follow you, I will listen to you wherever you go. That's a pretty bold statement just to make. So Jesus, being as flattered as he was by this, says, Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Now, I'm a guy who kind of tends to enjoy the sort of more rugged nuances of being a guy. Right? I like kind of, primitive lifestyle. I enjoy being outside. I enjoy sort of the tougher aspects of living in that world. And so when I first hear that, my first thought is, oh yeah, okay. That's not that bad. Right? Okay, so I gotta live a life where Jesus comes to me in a vision, he says, all right, Adam, I want you to go to the most primitive, backward culture in the world, and I want you to live with it. Like, I'd be fine with that. Like, I would go, oh, but they don't have cell phones. I'd be like, sweet, they don't have cell phones. Right? Oh, they don't have computers. Great. No computers. They don't even have money. Perfect. Give me a plane ticket with money. And I would go. Now, granted, my response to Jesus in that moment would be, I'm not the one in this relationship you're going to have to convince. Right? Pretty sure my wife is not with me. But, her responsibility for it, that's really done. But the idea is I'm okay with that portion of it. Like, when I read that, I thought, that's interesting, but you have to take a look at who it is he's talking to. A teacher of the law, okay, a scribe, someone of reputation, someone of stature in society, came up to him and said, I will follow you wherever you go. That would be, akin to someone of strong stature in the public environment coming up to you, the mayor of a city or a leader of a city who comes up to you and says, I believe in what you're teaching, I believe in what you're doing so much that I will follow you wherever you go. Okay, so this is a man of a very high stature. And so Jesus says to him, listen, that's great. I appreciate the flattery. But you understand that there's no guarantee of lifestyle with me. There's no guarantee of a roof over your head. There's no guarantee of your next meal. There's no guarantee of comforts of a great setting to sort of grow old in. There's no guarantee of those things with me. The only guarantee you have with me is that you will lay down at some point on a rock. There's no pillows where I'm going. And so he's responding to this man of stature whose life has been about the respect and attention of other people. A man whose life has been about living, with people looking up to him, with people following him. And wanting to have his input on things. And so Jesus says, listen, there's no comforts, there's no amenities where I'm going. You got to make sure you want to do that. See, this is like the poorest evangelism on earth, right? Because we're kind of ingrained to make it as comfortable as we can when people approach us about faith, right? You're a Christian? Yeah, but we're not weird ones. Right? We're not those wackos. No, we're focused. We're good people. We eat lots of food. Our church is very laid back, very capable. Right? Blue jeans acceptable. Right? Apparently. Right? But the idea is that we try to make it comfortable. We try to have settings that are not too over the top. We try to make sure now that even some of the icons of the church have kind of been pushed out. We're trying, you go to some contemporary churches now, it's not, it doesn't even, you wouldn't even know it was a church facility, right? Except for the fact that occasionally there's a pastor up there, talking out of the Bible or something. And so, we're kind of training the other way. Whatever it takes to get them in. Make the set. Right? Say what they need to hear. And so this guy comes to Jesus and says, this guy's ready to throw it out there. I'm in. And Jesus goes, really? Because I'm not sure you want me. If someone walked up to you and says, hey, I'd really like to come to your church, would your response, you look at him and go, no, I don't need it. I really don't think you do. Right? You guys are like, totally did that. But because you say, no, you totally should. We're great. We're fantastic. Everybody's friendly. Right? There's no pressure. You can have tattoos in our church. Right? It's totally cool. I have tattoos, so you know I have tattoos. But the whole very inside joke there. But there's this whole idea of trying to make people comfortable. And Jesus looks at him and says, no, the commitment that comes with a life with me is one that basically says, look, I know you enjoy your lifestyle, but you may have to leave that alone. We say, come in and use your strength. Jesus says, listen, you may have to drop your identity. Now, nowhere does he say that this man has to, but he says, listen, there's no comforts in a life spent following me. There's no guarantee that it's going to be fantastic and wonderful, but we have this setting that we sort of enjoy. And some of it is our culture, and some of it is our church culture, and some of it is just us. Can't blame America, and can't blame the church. It's just us. But some of it it has permeated us so much that that's really kind of what's holding us back. It's this idea of, I got to let that go. I got up really early yesterday morning, and so I started flipping through channels. And I started watching do-it-yourself shows, right? Because I want to remodel our whole house by basically tearing it down, starting over. And my wife's very excited. And so I'm watching these different shows, and I stumbled across this one that's called Sell This House or Sell Your House, where like the decorator guy is like terrifyingly huge, right? He's like, walks in, here's what we're gonna do here. Like, wow, whatever you say, man. Yeah, okay. But then I ultimately ended up on someone called Bathroom Crashers. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, it is. I totally agree. But this episode was, they had this line of people. I don't know, it was like 400 people. And they were going to select whose bathroom they were going to remodel. By who had the greatest plight, right? Who can inspire this guy to come remodel their bathroom? And they had 400 people in line, okay? So they're going up and down the line, and they're talking to these different families. And one guy's like, well, we have 5 kids in one bathroom. So we want to, we need more space. And so some of these are like legit. But the one he ends up doing, I don't know if you guys have seen this episode. It's this couple that lives in this huge house, and they have a bathroom the size of this building. And they're like, look at it, it's horrible. The toilet's next to the window. That's the problem? It's a little weird to have a full window next to a toilet, but I'm like, curtains, right? And it's problem solved. Blinds, right? Tinfoil, whatever. And I also keep telling you. And so, they end up doing this bathroom, and this woman makes an interesting comment, okay? They show this bathroom, and my wife's sitting there, because by now she's awake, she's sitting there, and she goes, I would kill for that bathroom. The one they're changing, right? And this woman's like, you don't know what I've been through. I had to live with this bathroom for 6 years. I could live in that bathroom for 6 years. Right? It's huge. They're like, that's us, right? It's idiots, I can't even look at it. And we have this idea of, we have these amenities and these comforts, they're just kind of who we are. And we almost feel bad for people who don't have them. We're like, oh, really? You know, and he chooses this. Out of all these people who are hurting, he picks this one that I'm going, those people are fine. And apparently, if they don't have home, they can remodel their own. And so there's this amazing thing. Well, you know, but that's kind of who we are. We have this idea, these amenities, these comforts that we've kind of earned. And so Jesus says to this teacher of the law, listen, you're not going to get to enjoy any of those anymore. You may not even have anyone to listen to you, because when you follow me, guess what? If I'm walking down the street with Jesus, and Jesus starts talking to people, guess how much my input matters now? Whatever's less than zero, right? Not just rocket energy. Whatever's less than zero. Because that's what my input matters. Now, here's this teacher of the law who's used to having what? Followers. Right? And Jesus says, you know what happens with me? If I'm sleeping on a stone, your existence is way worse than mine. You're going to follow me, and you're not going to matter anymore. And so he basically is trying to talk this man out of it. Now, you look at the verse goes on. It says that another man approaches. And says, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. Okay? And Jesus says to him, follow me and let the dead bury their own. Once again, strong evangelistic technique. Right?
Yeah.
Strong. Jesus is the master of the evangelistic technique. This is what we should be teaching in Evangelism Explosion. Right? It's reverse psychology. But this guy basically comes to give to Jesus this, I am just absolutely in love with your ministry, I'm in. But first, I need to go bury my father. Now, people will tell you that culturally what this means is I need to go let my dad die and get my inheritance. Right? And that's kind of depressing. Now, dad's going to run out. Right? That's basically what it is, right? I need to go kind of let my father pass. And then when he passes, I get an inheritance, and then I'm financially stable, and I can come with you. And basically, I have all this money. And who better to have follow you than this person who's financially sound and can go wherever and isn't stressed about having a job and can just help you out, free to do things because I'm retired because dad died, right? And so this is this idea, and Jesus says, listen, I don't really care about that because that's not how I live. I'm not really focused on those things, so why don't you just let the dead go take care of themselves? In other words, I know your ritual is important to you, but I don't care. Now try to go forward and think about that in our modern context, right? You become a missionary. You're on a foreign mission field. You get a phone call. Your father's passed. You need to come home and help care for his estate and get him help with that transition, right? And your response is, let the dead bury their own. You are off the Sun quality list, right? At that point, you might as well never come home. But isn't that what Jesus is saying?
Pretty much.
Right. So, once again, master of evangelism. He's telling them, listen, your earthly ritual, while is great. Now, he's not saying don't comfort people. He's not saying don't care for people. But he's saying, listen, you're wanting to elevate this earthly tradition, this human tradition, this human ritual, this human rite above what I'm asking you to do. And if you're on the mission field or you're doing ministry and things are rolling, things are awesome, things are fantastic, and you say, you know what, God, I got to put this on hold because I need to go take care of my father's estate. I need to go take care of that transition. Jesus is going, no, that's done. He's passed. Focus on them. Focus on where I'm going. See, he's talking about absolute commitment. He's talking about selling out to the cause. He's talking about, listen, I've got things going. This is where your focus should be. Your focus shouldn't be going backwards. But that's kind of how we work. We sit there and say, well, that would be, what a horrible son you would be. What a horrible son. We look at these two examples and we think, as a godly man or woman, you think well planned, well thought out, organized, focused. We don't want to see people running around doing crazy things on the spur of the moment, taking leaps of faith. We want people to be methodical, plotted, focused. That's Jesus' way. And Jesus is going, I sleep on a rock, and I let the dead bury their own. Two things that we don't look at. We think of, well, if I'm going to be a good Christian father, or if I'm going to be a good Christian husband, I have the 2.5 kids, right? I have the white picket fence. I focus. I take care of everything. Except that Jesus is saying, listen, there's no guarantees that that's where I'm taking you. There's no guarantees that that's what I have.